Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a drill. Our worst fears are coming to fruition. Hollywood has done it again, and I don't know if we'll ever be able to recover this time. How many times are we going to allow them to desecrate the good name of these franchises we love? All in an effort to introduce these characters and stories to a new generation. It's gone on long enough, and I'm not going to stand for it anymore. I'm proclaiming right here, right now, that I will do everything in my power to make sure that this never happens again. Let's discuss.
I watch so you don't have to.
Before I get started, I'd like to kindly ask that you hit the like button, and please subscribe to the channel for more content just like this.
All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
So within the past 2 weeks, we've seen 2 new trailers for reimaginings of 2 beloved franchises. The first was for yet another soulless Disney remake for a movie called Peter Pan and Wendy.
Oh, there's a big surprise!
Because if there's one thing we desperately needed as movie fans, it was yet another iteration of the Peter Pan story. It's not like we don't have 1,000 different versions of that story already. Many different options for the new generation to pick from. For me, it's the original Disney animated classic and Steven Spielberg's Hook that I typically go for.
You are a very poor role model for these kids, you know that?
Those were the 2 versions of this story that I personally grew up with, and that's what I think about when someone mentions Neverland. A bright, colorful, magical place that inspired the imaginations of kids for generations. Peter Pan and Wendy, on the other hand, looks about as visually pleasing as me watching the paint dry in my new recording room here. Based on what I saw in the trailer, Wendy looks pale and dull. The Lost Boys have the most uninspired designs that we've ever seen for those characters. They also make it very clear in the trailer that girls can be Lost Boys as well, because I'm sure that's something that was keeping a lot of people up at night. Yes, Queen! While I was watching the trailer, it actually reminded me of this very dull horror reimagining that we had a couple of years ago called Hansel and Gretel. Just completely devoid of any kind of life or imagination and just basically cashing in on an established name. Now I know a lot of people are going to respond to this and say, well, Peter Pan and Wendy is made for kids.
For the kids.
But if that's the case, then why doesn't it look like it was made for kids? The truth is that movies like this were made for adults for their own personal satisfaction. Because in reality, they have no real idea what's actually appealing to a child viewer. Because they themselves are dull people and completely devoid of any kind of childlike imagination. And then we see Peter himself, who, let's be honest, looks like he has about as much charisma as most modern Disney characters, which is basically not at all.
You want to take the credit, you go right ahead.
Robin Williams was a more believable 12-year-old, and he was trapped in a 40-year-old man's body. I saw a glimmer of color in the trailer when we are shown the mermaids, which was refreshing. I also see that they're including Native American characters, most notably Tiger Lily. It's nice to see that we haven't been completely erased from pop culture, at least not yet. Oh, and of course we get a glimpse of the new Tinkerbell. The one character that by definition should have a bright glow to her, but she looks as dull and lifeless as everyone else. We finish with a look at a somewhat decent looking Captain Hook, although he's no Dustin Hoffman, and the trailer finishes with a character taking a leap from a cliff onto a ship in a scene that looks like it was ripped right out of a modern Fast and Furious movie. Or maybe The Rock's Skyscraper.
That's right, it stinks!
Now, I'm obviously not a kid, but I was a kid at one time, believe it or not. And I can't imagine any child who wasn't put up to a scripted response by their parents just to get likes on social media that would be interested in seeing a movie like this based on how it's presented in this trailer. So I ask again, who is this movie really being made for? Besides Disney execs who are hoping to cash in on established IPs, mainly because they are completely devoid of any kind of new ideas.
Put some effort into it!
Which brings me to the second franchise reboot trailer that we are talking about in this video. And this one comes from the self-proclaimed permanent teenager in Seth Rogen. We have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. Now I'm going to start this off by asking the question, who thought it was a good idea to give Seth Rogen, of all people, full creative control on this movie? Because the guy hasn't been relevant or funny in years at this point. I guess the idea that he pitched to the studio for a new Ninja Turtles movie was just too good to pass up.
An R-rated animated Christmas comedy with a touch of a feminist agenda.
Now, as an avid Ninja Turtles fan from way back, I should be very excited about this, even if the movie is directed towards kids. Because in a perfect world, they should be trying to appeal to old fans and new fans alike, because that's what's going to make you the most money. But I'm not excited for this because how many times have we seen this attempted? Where they try to reinvent the wheel as it pertains to the Ninja Turtles and usually fail at doing so. To this day, no one has been able to capture the spirit of either that 80s cartoon show or the original live-action 90s movie.
Tell me, you didn't pay money for this.
They consistently try because, again, it's a recognizable brand, but if your heart isn't in the adaptation, then it's most likely going to fail. Because there are certain brands that just don't need updating. What we see initially in the trailer isn't all that bad. We see the Ninja Turtles doing teenager things. Even if their voices do sound a bit too young when you first hear them, it's a bit jarring. But I'm also not 100% against it if they're trying to make them as young as possible. The animation style very much makes me feel like they're trying to capitalize on all the Spider-Verse hype that's going on right now. It's not exactly the same, but it does have a similar vibe to it, and that's really not all that interesting to me either.
No, don't like that.
But yes, this is an attempt to modernize the Turtles. We see them filming their exploits. Because in 2023, you have to film all the dumb shit you do. Splinter, for some reason, has a afro/mullet. I'll chalk this up to grown adults inserting things into this story and this character that pleases them, because I really don't think it's going to make a difference from a kid perspective whether or not Splinter has an afro or not. Not to mention it does kind of make Splinter look like a bit of a joke. And Splinter always worked as being the wise, no-nonsense, straight-to-business type leader that he is. We also get comedy gold from Seth Rogen with such bits like a group of thugs calling the Turtles Shrek.
No! Layers!
So we all have that to look forward to. They also do the Ace Ventura "something is stuck in my leg" routine. On a positive note, coming off of that, at least they have their weapons, because that's not even a guarantee in modern entertainment. And then we get a goo/ooze joke that is brought up by the new April O'Neil. Now, there's already been a lot of back and forth about this iteration of April. There's a lot of people referring to source material that they've probably never read in their lives. So what's my take on April? Well, the big takeaway for me is, why do they always have to make these characters look like regular, everyday people? What's the infatuation with making fictional fantasy characters look as normal and as average as possible? Like you could pass them walking on the streets tomorrow in your hometown. Is it so people can see themselves in April? Because I assure you, normal kids really don't care about that. I know I didn't. So that was my biggest issue with April. Why? What did you think I was going to talk about?
Let me tell you something about America. Nobody likes a smartass, all right?
Anywho, bottom line, Hollywood is now notorious for giving us movies that nobody asked for. Movies that I'm not even 100% sure that they are sure who the audience is supposed to be. Now, obviously, the easy answer is to say kids. But if Lightyear taught us anything last year, it's that kids and parents aren't as simple as you think they are. And if you change enough about something that is already very popular, it will kind of cease to be that thing, and you will lose support from a good portion of your fan base, young and old. Nobody wanted a reimagining of Buzz Lightyear. Definitely, nobody wanted another reimagining of Peter Pan. And a reimagining of the Turtles may have been cool if they weren't so desperately more concerned with pleasing adults on Twitter than they are pleasing actual children. You don't have to remake greatness in order to make it relevant, because these things will always be relevant, and that's what makes them so great.
Y'all be cool. Right on.